The core emotion we feel is two things. One is anger and the other is sadness. Why is that? Because anger is a top level emotion. Anger is a top level emotion because once we get rid of the anger, and by get rid, I mean we need to physically release it from our bodies. We cannot meditate away anger. We can't journal it away. We can't pray it away. We have to physically remove it from our bodies, which looks like things like
Hi beautiful, it's Cheryl. A quick introduction to this video, which is all about the mother wound, continuing with our theme. And this video is taken from a recent event. I hosted a live group coaching event on healing your mother wound. And in this video, we're really going to explore how do you look at that anger that you feel of not having your needs met when you were small. And we go into that, and we go into some other really juicy information as well to really help you dig into and release the emotions that are associated with this experience so that you can move forward. We're always focused on forward movement with this. So even though we're looking at and exploring and unpacking something that happened in the past, we're making sure we're doing that so that we can move forward. And this clip is really going to help you with that. If you'd like to join our next event, it's called Heal Your Father Wound, which is a perfect complement to Heal Your Mother Wound. And healing your father wound is all about digging into your relationships with men, whether that's romantic or friendships, depending on how you relate with men and who you date. And it's also looking at your relationship to commitment, structure, motivation, and money. So what I typically see in my clients who have an active father wound is that they have a really interesting relationship with masculine energy. I see women who are overly masculine and pushing and not able to receive support. And I see men that are in a very wounded masculine energy and feel a little bit feminized. So that's what we're going to dig into and heal your father wound. It's an intimate group of 5 and it's going to be on April the 12th, and the details for that are down below. Okay, enjoy the video.
In our life. So the mother wound is the emotional void that's left by needs that were unmet by our biological mother and or the person who was raising us. So I had a client once who was raised by 2 women, and she was raised by her mother and her grandmother. And I said, that's interesting, tell me more. And she told me about how her mother was the one who went out to work, who earned the money, who did the whole breadwinner thing, very traditional roles I'm talking about here. This is the way she described it in the household. And she said that her grandma was the one who stayed at home, cooked the meals, and was very nurturing towards her. And I said, that's interesting. It sounds like your mum, your biological mum, stepped into the traditional father role and your grandma was in a very traditional mother role. And it was a massive breakthrough for her because she was able to understand how that was playing out in her relationships. She dated women and she was able to see that the women she was dating reminded her of her mother, who was in the father role. So this can get complex and convoluted depending on who we're dating and who we identify as, but basically the patterns are the same. So what the mother wound is about basically is 3 different things. It's about the relationship we have to ourselves, the relationship we have to our emotions, and the relationship we have to other women. I'm going to go through the core belief, the core experience, and the core emotion of the mother wound as I've seen it in my practice with my clients. So the core belief when we have a mother wound is, I am not good enough. There's something somewhere about me that is fundamentally flawed, not okay, and there's just something wrong. I'm not good enough. There's something wrong with me. That's the core belief when we have this mother wound. The core experience then, how we are experiencing life, how we are experiencing going through the world, is our needs are unmet. Our needs are not met. That can come up in lots of different ways, but we enter these relationships where we are overgiving, we are overstretching, we are in very inappropriate dynamics, and I'll come to why that is in a moment. But the core experience is my needs are not met. The core emotion we feel is 2 things. One is anger, and the other is sadness. Anger and sadness. Why is that? Because anger is a top level emotion. So the Gottman Institute did some really interesting research called the anger iceberg, which you may or may not have seen. And what it said was that anger is like the tip of the iceberg, and what's underneath the surface is all the other shit that you don't want to look at. They didn't explain it that way. I'm paraphrasing just slightly. But anger is a top level emotion because once we get rid of the anger, and by get rid, I mean we need to physically release it from our bodies. We cannot meditate away anger, we can't journal it away, we can't pray it away, we have to physically remove it from our bodies, which looks like things like HIIT training, kickboxing, running, weight training. Any kind of physical release is going to release that anger from our system that's been bottled up. And then from that place, we're going to start to feel very tender emotions arise, which feel more like sadness, hurt, betrayal, feeling vulnerable, not feeling safe, heartbreak, those really soft, tender emotions that actually anger is trying to mask and trying to protect us from. Let's look at then, what are some signs that we might have a mother wound? What does that look like? In our friendships with women, what it looks like is we're the supporter, we're the one giving support, we're the one listening, counseling, all of that. We're giving, and we're not receiving. We do that thing where we'll listen for hours and the other person will be like, oh, I feel so much better, thank you. And we walk away feeling like shit, feeling resentful, not feeling good. So they feel better, we feel worse. We overgive, we overstretch. We think it's our role, our responsibility to fix other people's problems. We're very codependent. We lose ourselves in other people. So that's what it looks like in our relationship with female friends. What does it look like when we have female partners? It looks like dating and there's no real politically correct way to say this, but the drama queens, the ones where there's always chaos, there's always drama, there's always a problem, something's broken, something's flooded, something's crashed, smashed, whatever it might be, there's always a problem, and guess what? They're on the other end of the phone to you and it's your job to fix it, right? So there's this kind of chaos creation that happens with these types of women we're attracting in relationships when we have this mothering wound. We also might find ourselves dating women who are who don't have a very good relationship with their own emotions, who can't emotionally regulate, who have a slight level of emotional immaturity when it comes to being able to work through their own problems. They're not really able to take personal responsibility for where they're at, and it's always someone else's fault and expect someone else to fix them. There's often a financial instability with these kinds of women too. They're not really self-made. They might look to you as their partner to fix them, save them, not in a way of providership in a healthy way, but in this way of like, I'm not going to work, you're going to do everything for me, and I feel entitled to that, right? There's an entitlement there. And with these types of women that you might be attracting if you have the mother wound, there's just a general feeling of like lack of emotional safety with them. You know, when you meet a woman, either as a friend or a partner, who is like, feels like a warm hug or like a warm cup of tea, like they're very like nurturing and you feel very safe with them and they feel like a warm bath. They're just a lovely person to be around. They feel very safe. These types of women you're attracting when you have an active mother wound, they're the opposite of that. It's just like chaos, high drama, just a lot of spikes in emotion. There's not a feeling of like calmness and being serene and relaxed. It's very, very high stress, high alert, hypervigilance. So how can this show up then in your relationship with yourself and your emotions? Similar to some of those women I was describing, actually. So it looks like not really taking care of yourself and rescuing other people. It looks like overworking and then feeling guilty for taking time off. It can look like, how it looks like in my clients most of the time, is they're very high achieving. They work for big tech, or they work in venture capital, or they're self-employed, they're an entrepreneur, or they're a Hay House author. And I remember one of my friends who's a Hay House author, her book went to #1 on Amazon. I was so excited for her. And I said, that's amazing. You must feel so proud. Like, how does that feel? And she looked at me, we were in a taxi in LA, and she looked at me and she said, Cheryl, I just want to know, like, when am I finally going to feel good enough? And it was like being punched in the stomach. I was like, oh God, I felt that, you know? this is what it's like to have an active mother wound. No matter what you do on the outside, it doesn't matter. You're not going to feel good enough until you do this work. So how it shows up in my clients often is they're overachievers, hard workers. They really think their worth will be found in the next thing, the next job, the next promotion, the next car, the next house, the next feature in the media, you name it. But it's like they're constantly on the hamster wheel. And because of that, they find it very difficult to relax and feel very guilty when they take time out to take care of themselves. They also, their self-talk is really scathing. So your inner dialogue is really what you're repeating from a very critical mother who wasn't kind and who didn't say, oh, it's okay, you made a mistake, let's try again. It was very like, what's wrong with you? You did this wrong, like very critical, very harsh. That then becomes our inner dialogue, right? How does it show up in our emotions? Well, we don't really have a good grasp of our emotions. How it can often show up in people who have an active mother wound is that depression can often be there. And that often is masking a lot of the anger and sadness that they really don't want to feel, particularly anger. I see a lot of untapped anger and rage, particularly in women that have this, who want to who really need to unlock the anger and rage they feel of not being nurtured, because the role of a mother, just to take a few steps back and really focus on this as a traditional role, the role of the mother is to nurture, to self-soothe, and to take care of, and to be unconditionally loving towards. And so if your mother didn't do that, if she gave you love with conditions, which looks like whole bunch of things, but it can include doing well in school, looking a certain way, behaving a certain way, being of a certain status, looking a certain way for the neighbors, what will the neighbors think, all that kind of stuff, then that's very conditional. You learned that you were only going to receive her acceptance and love when you did certain things. When that didn't happen, when you went against what she desired, instead of having a conversation about it, there would be stonewalling, silent treatment, and a withdrawal of love. Why is a withdrawal of love so terrifying? Because when we're children, we need our mother to survive, right? Physically, we need her. And so in our very small brains, particularly before the ages of 5 and 6, our inner alarm system is going off and it's saying, I'm not safe, I'm not going to be fed, changed, responded to when I cry. And it goes to a very, very small part of us where we feel unsafe.